What if all of a sudden global trade just stopped? Poof, gone. No more.
Liberation
It's
Day.
a scenario, right? But it makes you realize how much of our lives, from the stuff we barely think about to the things we absolutely depend on, is tied to this global exchange. It's a huge interconnected web, and we rarely stop to consider what would happen if those threads were cut. Today, we're diving deep into what this America, this self-contained America, would actually look like.
Make America wealthy again.
We've dug into real economic analyses, historical examples of self-sufficient societies, and some fascinating hypothetical scenarios. Our goal isn't to get bogged down in complex economic theories, but to walk you through the major shifts, the things you'd really feel in your daily life. We're aiming for those aha moments, those times where you think, wow, I never realized how connected everything really is. So here's our roadmap. We'll break it down into key areas: the food we eat, the energy that powers everything, technology, that's a big one, healthcare, obviously crucial, how we get around, the clothes we wear, and consumer goods, the economy and jobs, and finally, the potential societal shifts. Let's dive in, starting with something we all connect with: food. Right away, there's an interesting dynamic. The US is a powerhouse for certain foods, bulk stuff like grains, meat. So those core staples, bread, pasta, rice, milk, cheese, eggs, US raised meat, those wouldn't vanish overnight. The basic calories would still be covered. Okay, that's good. But here's where it gets tricky. We rely a lot on imports for a good chunk of our food. Almost a fifth comes from somewhere else. Crazy, right? And those imports are the things that would likely vanish from store shelves pretty quickly. What kind of stuff? Picture your fruit bowl. Bananas, pineapple, mangoes, avocados. Kiss those goodbye. Oh no, not avocados. Yeah, they'd become super rare, maybe gone completely. The US climate just isn't right for growing them large scale. And it's not just exotic stuff. Over half the everyday fruits and nuts we eat come from overseas. Your grocery store choices would shrink considerably. Those out-of-season berries, year-round citrus, poof, gone. Nervous yet? How about your morning routine? Coffee, tea, chocolate, big ones. Almost all our coffee is imported, except a tiny bit from Hawaii. Cacao beans for chocolate, 100% imported. Tea leaves, mostly from Asia. Say goodbye to those morning rituals. It would be a caffeine crisis for sure. And seafood? The counter at the supermarket would look totally different. Something like 70 to 85% of the seafood we eat comes from elsewhere. Shrimp, almost 90%. You'd mainly see local catches: Alaskan salmon, Gulf shrimp, and they'd probably be way more expensive. No more imported lamb or New Zealand beef either. It's not just the obvious things, those special ingredients adding flavor. Olive oil, spices, hard to come by. Most olive oil, most cane sugar, gone. We might see more domestic beet and cane sugar, but spices like black pepper, cinnamon, vanilla, mostly grown elsewhere. Cooking would become a lot less exciting. But hey, it's not all doom and gloom. Basic staples would be around. Plenty of grains, meat, dairy. We'd probably shift back to eating seasonally and locally. Summer might mean plenty of apples, berries, tomatoes, greens, depending where you live. But winter, that's a different story. We'd rely more on storable things like potatoes and onions, more canned goods, frozen foods. Greenhouse produce might become more common. But if a region had a bad harvest, no imports to fill the gap. Local food shortages become a real possibility. We take for granted having any food, anytime, anywhere. What about processed foods? Prepackaged stuff? Ready meals? We'd likely see more domestic food processing using available ingredients, more canning, drying, preserving. But anything relying on imported ingredients would have to change or disappear. Expect simpler flavors, more focus on local stuff. We might even see victory gardens making a comeback, people growing their own food out of necessity. And government rationing, absolutely possible for key items, just like coffee back in the 40s. So, summing up food, we're looking at eating more simply, seasonally, locally, like going back a few generations in our diets. Next up, energy. Here, the picture might be less bleak. The US actually produces more energy than it consumes. We're a net energy exporter. Good news, right? What about transportation fuel? We have huge reserves of crude oil and natural gas. Theoretically, we could produce enough gasoline and diesel. We even export some refined fuels. So, no gas shortages. Well, not so fast. There's a catch. Some refineries are set up for specific types of crude oil, often heavy crude, which we import, especially from Canada, Mexico, OPEC. If those sources dried up, those refineries would struggle. There'd be a scramble. So even with the oil, expect bumps. Short-term disruptions are likely. The government might tap the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. Gas rationing and price hikes wouldn't be surprising, like the 70s gas lines. Even once settled, we might see ongoing fuel management, monthly allotments, maybe filling up based on license plate numbers. Okay, what about electricity? Keeping the lights on? Mostly good news. Most electricity comes from domestic sources: natural gas, coal, nuclear, renewables. We have plenty of coal and natural gas, so the lights likely stay on. One wrinkle: nuclear power needs enriched uranium, and we import a lot of that. After maybe a couple of years, nuclear plants could face trouble. The government would likely step in, maybe repurpose military uranium, boost domestic enrichment. In the meantime, probably lean more on natural gas and coal. Not ideal, but it keeps power flowing. Another thing, the power grid itself might become less reliable. Why? Critical spare parts for things like high-voltage transformers, control systems, a lot comes from overseas. If something breaks and we can't get replacements, problems, like more frequent rolling blackouts, maybe voltage fluctuations, things could get less predictable. Heating and industry? Mostly okay with domestic fuels. Homes using natural gas or electricity should be fine. Heating oil users could probably switch to domestically refined fuel. Industries using petroleum materials should manage. The snag? Specialized catalysts and chemicals used in refining or industrial processes. Many are imported. Finding domestic substitutes could slow things down. Now, green energy, solar, wind. This gets sticky. Producing solar panels, wind turbines, EV batteries relies heavily on imported components and critical minerals. Without those shipments, mostly from China and Taiwan, new solar installations grind to a halt. Wind farms won't expand quickly. We'd be stuck with existing renewable capacity, no real growth, until we build a strong domestic supply chain. That could mean a temporary increase in fossil fuel use because the transition stalls. Slower adoption of EVs and home solar, not due to lack of want, but lack of available batteries and panels. A step back for clean energy goals. The key takeaway for energy? Unlike food or medicine, widespread permanent energy shortages are unlikely. We'd pay more, adjust, turn down the thermostat. Manageable. Long-term, we'd likely boost domestic manufacturing of energy equipment. Some adjustments, challenges, but not a complete energy apocalypse. All right, now for something hitting many hard: technology and electronics. This gets really interesting. The tech sector is so globally connected. If trade stops, it's like rewinding our electronics access by decades. No more new iPhones, shiny laptops? You got it. Once stores sell existing stock, no more coming in. Most electronics, even if designed here, are made elsewhere, like China, Vietnam. Domestic manufacturing? Minimal. We only make about 12% of the world's semiconductors, the brains of these gadgets. So phone breaks, computer dies. You're pretty much out of luck. Electronic stores would be bare. No big product launches. Anything on the second-hand market? Super expensive. Repair shops? Swamped. Fixing screens, replacing batteries, refurbishing old devices becomes essential. People hoarding spare parts. The right to repair movement explodes. We'd have to fix our own stuff. DIY repairs, community workshops, people hanging on to old tech for dear life, dusting off flip phones, clunky desktops. Back to basics. It's not just gadgets. The infrastructure feels it. Telecoms rely on imported network gear. No more 5G rollout. Maintaining existing networks? Tricky. Potentially slower internet, more outages, cloud services, streaming. Might hit limits if data center hardware can't be upgraded. Technologically, we take a step back in time. Long term, could we rebuild a domestic electronics industry? Maybe. Slow, costly. Efforts like the CHIPS Act aim to boost domestic semiconductor manufacturing, but it's a long game. And raw materials? Lithium for batteries, rare earths? Mostly imported. Huge hurdle. Getting domestic mining and supply chains running takes years. We might push electronics recycling, but it's tough. Our relationship with technology changes dramatically. Older devices focus on repair, maybe passing gadgets down. The rapid tech advancement pace slows way down, maybe puts us behind other countries, a gadget drought. Not gone, but slowed. Okay, now for something where the stakes are incredibly high, medicine and healthcare. This gets serious. A trade stop could have life or death consequences. Immediate shortages of drugs, equipment, supplies. Our system is built on global supply chains. Pharmaceuticals are a big worry. We import a lot, especially generics, from India and China. About a third of our pharma spending goes to imports. Over half the bulk chemicals to make drugs come from there. Pharmacies running out of essentials quickly? Yep. Antibiotics, blood pressure meds, diabetes treatments, pain relievers. We haven't made penicillin domestically since 2004. Reserves run dry fast. Common infections become much more dangerous. People with chronic conditions? Insulin, inhalers, thyroid meds. Many imported or made with imported ingredients. Even over-the-counter stuff like ibuprofen could be hard to find. Active ingredients often made overseas. Expect rationing. Pharmacies limiting supplies, prioritizing patients. Doctors using older, maybe less effective, treatments because they're the only ones available. Compounding pharmacies. High demand, but limited by raw material shortages. It's not just meds. Hospital equipment and supplies are often imported too. High-tech scanners, surgical tools, even basic gloves and masks. Getting replacement parts for fancy imaging machines? Tough. More breakdowns. Diagnostic delays. Remember pandemic PPE shortages? Could be like that, potentially worse. Advanced devices like pacemakers, insulin pumps, often have global components. Getting them? A problem. Even basic hospital supplies like IV bags, surgical instruments, some imported, a dire situation, a major crisis. The government would surely act, invoke the Defense Production Act, get factories making essential drugs, supplies, push domestic pharma to ramp up, maybe start making drugs they currently import. It's almost like reinventing our entire pharmaceutical industry from scratch. A huge undertaking. The transition? Really tough. People calling around for meds, doctors making do, elective surgeries on hold for serious conditions like cancer. Devastating if treatments are disrupted. A real struggle. But necessity is the mother of invention, right? Maybe universities and biotech find new ways to synthesize drugs using only domestic materials. Maybe 3D printing helps make medical components. Maybe communities carefully share medications under supervision. A real test of resilience. Long run, maybe we become more self-sufficient in healthcare, but that transition would be rough. It highlights our system's vulnerability. Let's move to how we get around. Transportation. Shaken up for sure. Cars to planes, deeply tied to global trade. The car industry? About half the cars sold here are imports. Even American-made cars often have lots of foreign parts. Only about 50% U.S. components on average. Over 60% of auto parts are imported before assembly. Trade stops? Dealerships empty fast. New and used car prices? Through the roof. People holding on to old cars for dear life. Fixing them? A nightmare. Shortages of spare parts, brake pads, filters, tires, especially electronics. Scavenging from junkyards. DIY repairs out of necessity. People getting creative. Maybe small-scale local manufacturing of simpler parts pops up. But repairs take forever. Some models might become unusable. Those old, simple, easy-to-fix clunkers become valuable. The government might step in, prioritize essential transport, trucks delivering food, supplies, maybe direct factories to make truck parts, perhaps even simpler, robust trucks using 100% U.S. parts, maybe older designs. A shift towards railroads for freight seems likely, as rail might be easier to maintain domestically. Air travel? Hit hard. Airlines rely completely on global networks for planes, parts. Even Boeing uses foreign components. Forget new Airbus planes. A mess. No new planes. A struggle to keep existing ones flying. Fewer flights, sky-high prices. Airlines grounding planes for spare parts? Plausible. Air travel becomes less common, more expensive, reserved for essential needs. Public transport. Buses, subways face similar maintenance, new vehicle issues. Fewer buses, older equipment used longer. Ironically, as car ownership gets harder, more rely on public transport, straining a struggling system. Cities might focus on key routes, cannibalize parts, encourage walking, biking, carpooling. Even bicycle manufacturing uses imported components. And tires? Big issue. We import lots of natural rubber. Even if we make fuel, trucks need tires. Expect tire rationing, priority for essential vehicles, a push for domestic synthetic rubber, more tire retreading. Overall transportation picture, traveling less, sticking closer to home, thinking carefully about vehicle use, a much more localized life. That brings us to clothes and consumer goods, another area heavily reliant on global supply chains. Massively. 97% of clothing and shoes sold here are imported. Once stores sell out, racks empty. We'd be shopping our closets. Second-hand markets, thrift stores, swap meets, booming. A return to old skills, mending, darning, passing things down. Make do and mend becomes the motto. We have a small domestic apparel sector, but starting low. Textile mills, sewing factories might return, but it takes time, money. Clothes likely more expensive, basic. Shortages of items like sneakers, almost all made in Asia. Even brands manufacturing here couldn't keep up. Repair shoes or wear something else. It's not just clothes. Toys, home decor, kitchen gadgets, furniture, cleaning supplies. Much is imported. Shelves bare. Big appliances like fridges, washing machines. Focus on fixing or finding used, maybe older, simpler, repairable models. Old school appliances built to last become treasures. Smaller appliances like toasters, microwaves might vanish until domestic alternatives exist. Cheap furniture? Gone. People hang on to old furniture, maybe build their own. Even light bulbs, kitchen utensils could be hard to find. Heirloom items gain appreciation. Overall, consuming less, valuing quality, durability, more creative reuse. A shift from big box retailers, reliant on imports, towards localized, smaller producers. Big chains might shrink, close, or focus on domestic secondhand goods, maybe add repair services. Forget online mega retailers delivering globally sourced goods instantly. Online marketplaces for used goods might boom, a shift toward a more sustainable, less wasteful, perhaps more austere lifestyle. Less choice, maybe more appreciation for what we have. And that brings us to the bigger picture, the economy and jobs. A sudden stop to global trade would be an economic earthquake. Think about all those jobs directly tied to trade. Dock workers, truck drivers, warehouse staff, retail workers selling imported goods, all at risk. Even export industries, like agriculture, suffer, losing their markets. The stock market likely tanks. We'd face a sharp recession, maybe depression-like conditions. Prices soar due to shortages, while purchasing power drops. It's like completely rethinking our economy. But there are opportunities. All those things we imported, we'd have to start making them ourselves. A surge in domestic manufacturing, food processing machinery, basic textiles, industrial equipment. That means jobs. A huge shift in the job market, retraining needed. White-collar jobs tied to global trade might shrink, but STEM jobs, skilled trades, manufacturing, High demand. We'd see more automation too. The government would step in big time, rationing, price controls, directing materials, almost like a wartime economy, maybe directly investing in key industries. Our financial system adjusts, less money flowing globally. The trade deficit vanishes, but the adjustment is painful. Economic pain isn't spread evenly. Some regions get hit harder. Shortages and rationing, maybe like Wabihul with coupons, become normal. Black markets pop up despite efforts. Could we adapt long term? Rebuild a strong economy? Probably. It'd be a tough transition. Maybe 5, 10 years of real struggle. But eventually domestic industries grow. We become more self-sufficient. A different kind of economy emerges. Less focused on consumer goods, more on essentials, higher costs, less variety, but more resilient. Key survival sectors, defense, agriculture, resource extraction, grow. A leaner, meaner economy. Not flashy, but focused. Beyond the economy, huge societal shifts occur. How we live, interact, our values, everything transforms. It's a cultural transformation. That consumer mindset? Gone. No more instant gratification, endless choices. It becomes about needs, not wants. Practicality rules. We become mindful of waste. That make do and mend mentality takes hold. Old-fashioned skills resurge, canning, preserving, fixing clothes, making do. DIY becomes a way of life. Community repair workshops, swap meets, bartering, tool libraries, all emerge from necessity. Our whole way of moving changes. Less travel, more localized living. Working closer to home or remotely. More walking, biking, packed public transport if it runs. Leisurely road trips, cross-country flights, rare luxuries. Travel becomes intentional. Entertainment gets simpler, maybe more low-tech. Streaming might stutter. No new consoles. Board games, books, local sports, community events see a renaissance. Communication might even lean back on landlines or face-to-face meetings if digital networks strain, communities band together, neighborhood gardens, watch groups, skill sharing. There could be initial unrest over shortages, but maybe a we're all in this together spirit prevails, like the WTW Homefront. Civic groups, churches, local governments become crucial for support. The government is visible daily. Rationing boards, public service announcements on conservation, maybe even propaganda promoting patriotism and reporting black markets. Education shifts too. More practical skills, maybe even youth labor mobilization for farms or factories. This could exacerbate inequalities, but maybe over time, as conspicuous consumption fades, class distinctions blur. People valued more for skills than stuff. Psychologically, a sense of loss for the old abundance, but perhaps a rekindled community spirit. Nostalgia for past eras of self-reliance might surge. Daily conversation shifts to practical concerns, trading eggs for tomatoes, finding parts, local news. In the end, America adapts by turning inward. More community-oriented, resourceful, accustomed to a lower material standard. It's challenging, but humans adapt. After the chaos, people find meaning with what they have. The resilience built could become a point of pride. The United States reboots itself, reminiscent of an earlier era, but with modern knowledge. It's a society perhaps poorer in goods, but potentially richer in self-reliance and solidarity. The road is hard, but the nation finds a new equilibrium, standing, for better or worse, alone.